top 20 worst video game controllers of all time. The modern scientific standard for controller usability is measured by the number of times a controller can be angrily thrown against a screen. That is what we laid emphasis on while coming up with our list. Some of these controllers had interesting ideas, but they definitely missed the mark when it came to form and functionality. In this video, we look at the top 20 worst video game controllers of all time. If you are a gamer, I believe you will concur with me on this. Sit tight and let's go through it together. But before we begin, kindly show us some love by hitting that subscribe button. That way, you'll continue to enjoy more of our amazing weekly content. Please give us a like, share the video, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell for timely updates of our new uploads. Let's get it on! 1. Sega Master System. When the Genesis began its global rollout in Japan way back in 1988, it was the beginning of a new golden era for Sega, at least in the console market. Sega gave birth to their Master System, and games always felt a bit mushy for it. The control pad, labeled Control Pad, felt like we were playing Double Dragon with the Braille system. And the raised nub sanded our thumbs down after extended play sessions. And lastly, the buttons had too far of a travel time, adding to the imprecision. 2. Xbox Controller S. At least the original fat Xbox controller was sort of a parental control. Your 5-year-old brother couldn't play those M-rated games, simply because his chubby Smurf hands were too small for the OG controller. However, Microsoft got the controller problem right when they decided to use a Japanese controller as part of the de facto Xbox bundle, replacing the tank-like original fat controller. 3. The Duke. Compared to its more ergonomic contemporaries such as the DualShock 2 for the PlayStation 2, as well as the default controller for the Nintendo GameCube, the Duke, as it has been named, is more of a dupe than anything else. The only thing royal about the original Microsoft Xbox controller is how it will go down as the king of the worst video game controllers. Thankfully, Microsoft was smart enough to dial back on its design and release the S a few years later, which spots the same design philosophy that would be used later for the default controllers for the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One. 4. PlayStation 2 DualShock Controller. The Sony PlayStation 2 DualShock Controller had to feature on our video. The wire, especially compared to the Alaskan pipeline, that was the SNES controller, was too short. And it didn't pop out of the port easily if someone tripped on it, or you pulled it accidentally, which meant that if the PS2 were on the shelf, it would crash, leaving you as a gamer utterly disappointed. 5. Nintendo N64 Controller. The Nintendo 64 gaming console was released in the United States in September 1996. Named for its 64-bit CPU, the Nintendo 64 was also known as the N64, was the last desktop video console to use cartridges. Who in their right mind would design a controller so cumbersome? To use it, no human with 2 hands could reach both the analog stick and the D-pad without having to contort their hands. The N64 was so controversial that it was discontinued in 2001 to make room for the launch of the GameCube. 6. Kinect. The creatures of one of the worst video game controllers ever released simply went down by forcing everyone to buy it. Taking a cue from the Power Glove of yesteryear, Microsoft made a more modern version of Nintendo's take on remote interaction and decided that it was so good that people had to buy it. Everything that could have gone wrong for Kinect went wrong, including poor performance in low lighting conditions and a lack of support from developers. To say that the Kinect was dead just right before its release would only be fitting. 7. Sega Genesis 6-button controller. Nothing much, except that depending on certain games, playing with a 6-button Sega Genesis controller instead of a 3-button one would sometimes mess up the button configurations. For that reason, it was really never a hit among gamers. 8. DualShock 3. Speaking of launching a controller with features that no game ever supported, The DualShock 3 is a perfect example of how even the most successful companies can launch a dud. When it was released, the Sony DualShock 3 was fresh off the heels of Sony DualShock 2. In itself, it was a massive improvement over the already excellent DualShock for the original PlayStation that arguably started the current design trend of gaming controllers. Unfortunately, the DualShock 3 failed to meet expectations. It was just a downright failure. Sure, the design was great. Nobody questioned that. But by dropping the vibration feature and prioritizing motion controls at a time when games very rarely supported the feature, if at all, Sony stumbled upon one of the worst video game controllers of all time. 9. ProController. Any legend who plays video games in the 80s and 90s will confirm that those were weird times for video games. With companies feeling each other out and trending uncharted waters, there were bound to be a failure or two. The ProController for the Atari Jaguar was just bizarre. By adding a number pad into the ProController, Atari made the Jaguar's gamepad unnaturally large, even for its time. 10. DDR mat. Like the Sega Master System controller, there wasn't much else that could be done with a DDR mat. Plus, the home mats could be unresponsive at times to the point where you had to stomp on arrows in order to complete a certain move. 11. Keyboard mouse. The PC isn't a console per se, and we hate to encourage PC elitists. By using a keyboard and mouse, you share a significant commonality with a guy who scoffs at the crisis on a console as he pushes his glasses back up his nose. It has never been a fulfilling moment. 12. Intel Wireless Series Gamepad. Intel is one of the biggest companies around. It is undeniable that their reputation far exceeds that of the video game industry. But even they aren't immune to making questionable choices. Equal parts controller and equal parts neck support. This weird excuse for a controller promised a more comfortable way of playing video games. Still, it failed to deliver massively because it was the exact opposite of comfortable wear and use. 13. Guitar Hero Controller. The first guitars released weren't wireless, so you had to make sure you weren't shredding too hard. Fortunately, Neversoft took care of this problem when Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock released, creating a wireless guitar that could be purchased with the game. 4. Power Glove. How could a company fail more than thinking gamers had 3 arms? The creators of this device were probably deceived that people would buy something that looked straight out of the Super Sentai TV show, a genre of Japanese TV shows that inspired the likes of Power Rangers, among others. The Power Glove placed the NES controller's buttons on your forearm and allowed you to control the screen using hand gestures. Plus, it had numbered buttons. Basically, the Power Glove served as the inspiration for several controllers who unfortunately found themselves on our list. 15. The Dreamcast Controller. There are a lot of reasons why the Dreamcast failed as a controller. For one, it was way ahead of its time. Secondly, it went up against the PlayStation 2, which, by the way, went down as a best-selling console of all time. Lastly, the controller definitely did not do Dreamcast any favor. The bulky shape of the Dreamcast controller was probably even worse than that of the N64 that we featured earlier. It felt flimsy and cheap for how stocky it looked, with an unnatural feel when held that was a far cry from that of the DualShock. 16. Xbox 360 Controller. Too bad Microsoft is limited when it comes to their R&D blood supply. When they put all their energy into the controller, they drain the life force out of their console design. Hence, the Red Ring debacle. 17. Sega Activator. This was one of the video game controllers which was released ahead of its time. For a team, it seemed as if Sega could do no wrong. With a VR as big as it is today, the Sega Activator would probably fit right in with today's tech, provided it was improved upon enough. But back then, the novelty of having a full-body game controller that had you hopping around your living room so that you could try and make Sony run a single straight line wasn't enough to get people to buy the Sega Activator. The worst part about the Sega Activator is that it launched and died with 0 games actually made to support it. 18. PlayStation 3 Controller. The PlayStation 3 was developed by Sony Computer Entertainment to replace the PlayStation 2 and is a part of the PlayStation brand of consoles. But truly speaking, Sony messed with perfection. They took the Pinnacle controller and performed a little lip surgery on the L2/R2 buttons. The end result was a mere shadow of its former greatness. 19. Wiimote. It was just awkward to hold when playing traditional D-pad/button games, and it tended to slip out of your mom's hand when she played Wii Sports. This could cause an argument between her and your dad on why the new plasma TV got broken less than a month after they finally got the damn thing off the layaway at Amazon. The Wiimote is simply a no-go zone. 20. 2600 Joystick. Well, it only had one button, but who cares? All you were doing was shooting little tank-like blocks that, when blown up, sounded like a dial-up modem connecting. Such superficial features really never made a hit out of the 2600 Joystick. Did you enjoy our video? Do you happen to be a gamer? And if so, what are your favorite games? Well, if you enjoyed our video, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more of our amazing content. Please give us a like, share the video, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell for timely updates of our weekly uploads. We value your feedback. Feel free to share your thoughts with us in the comment section below.